On this episode of the Voice of the Arts podcast page, we are joined by Hannah Weller and Alexandra Shea. Both are members of the Venn Duo podcast. So, tell us a little bit about yourselves, how your music career started, and where you are currently pursuing your master's degree.
Well, thanks so much for having us, Matt. I am Hannah. I am originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where the great WQED radio station is hosted. But I did my undergraduate degree at Messiah University in Harrisburg, PA. There I studied with Dr. Stephanie Kramer. And right now I'm currently pursuing my master's in clarinet performance at the University of North Texas in Denton, Texas. Here I am a student of Dr. Kim Cole-Leweveno, and I'm really enjoying it. It's a fantastic place to study music.
And I'm Alexandra. I also went to Messiah University, but I'm originally from Nassau, Bahamas. Currently, I'm getting my doctorate at Arizona State University under Dr. Robert Spring and Dr. Joshua Gardner, and that's also where I got my master's.
So, I assume that both of you met at Messiah University in Harrisburg.
Yes, yep. We did. We became fast friends there. We were stand partners for almost every single ensemble we played in. And honestly, that's how we got to know each other. And that's how we found out we enjoyed playing together. So we decided to make a thing of it. That's why we're Venn Duo today.
Yep.
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Initially, we never performed together in person. Like never. So it was kind of crazy when we started because it was all virtual. It was when the pandemic hit. And we were like, dang it, this was our opportunity to play live at, I think it was my recital, or we were planning something. And it never happened.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I can remember like right before spring break, like sitting down and playing this duo with you. I think we were playing the bossy variations on the Bellini, the Efer duet with the B flat, and we were so excited to play it after spring break. And I remember like going home and practicing it, and then all of a sudden getting that email that we weren't coming back. And so we had never, until Clarinet Fest 2022 in Reno, Alex and I had never performed together as a duo in person. Obviously, we did, lots of virtual collaborations over the pandemic. And even after the pandemic, we continued and still continue to do that. But I mean, Reno was the first time we had ever played together as a duo. I mean, and let me tell you, it's just not the same. Like playing together in orchestra, playing together in wind ensemble, like that is a very different experience than just the two of us standing up there being like, okay, let's go. But it really worked, and it was an amazing experience.
Yes.
So I assume the inspiration of this was from the pandemic, I had assumed, because you said that both of you never had the opportunity to play with one another. So I guess talk us through like what was going on during that brief period of time that you finally said maybe we should start doing these virtual performances.
I think like for us, so obviously we just mentioned before the pandemic hit and before we knew that it was going to be a thing, we were planning an in-person performance. When it hit, we were learning this piece that Hannah just mentioned. And we were like, we're gonna, can we record this? Because at that time we didn't have microphones. We didn't know how to use GarageBand, which is what we mostly use. We didn't know how to do anything. And we were like, okay, how does this work? And I remember us like having difficulties at first trying to figure it out. And we were both on YouTube, like how to do collaborations. Because at that point, we didn't even know it was called a multi-track. We were just all over the place. And then from that point on, once we successfully did the first one, we was like, this is kind of cool. Let's keep going. And then we would use like a ton of free duets that we would find online. Once in a while, we would buy a duet if we really liked it, but mostly we were hitting all of those like Bach duets. So that's kind of like where we started, why we started, and how we are what we are today.
Yeah, totally. And sometimes I like look back and laugh. Like, I don't even know if it's still up on my Instagram. I might have taken it down since, but like the very first video Alex and I did together, it's like my screen is the big screen, but we couldn't figure out how to screen share so that I was half and Alex was half. So Alex is literally like this little like postage stamp in the corner, and like in my bedroom is the big screen, and it's just so janky. But I get really proud of us because now we can turn over a project. Like if we have all the audio and all the video stuff, like we can usually turn over a project and get it post ready in like 2-3 days. And so our efficiency has definitely improved, which, gold star for us for coming so far on that front of things. It used to take us a lot longer to, put all that together. But I guess as far as our name, like whenever Alex and I were doing this over the pandemic, we were like cranking out these videos. We were like, hey, like we really like doing this together, and this is a really great way for us to stay connected. Like obviously we are friends, and we knew that we would be going our separate ways in our music careers. We weren't always going to be geographically close together, but that doesn't mean that we had to stop making music together or anything like that. So we were like, we kind of want to make this a thing. Like we kind of want to establish ourselves as a duo. And so we were like, okay, let's just play a game of hypotheticals. If we were a duo, what would our name be? And so Alex was like, no, it has to be short and it has to be catchy. And so I'm like throwing out all these things, and she's like, no, that's not it. That's not it either. And so I was like, well, I was thinking about us. I was thinking about me, and I was thinking about Alex. And, we come from these two very separate backgrounds. Like Alex being from the Bahamas and, growing up with a totally different upbringing than me, just coming from two very separate places with tons of different life experiences. But if it weren't for music, and if it weren't for us meeting in this tiny little place, Messiah University, we never would have been friends. And, I was like, how special is it that I have such a great friend, but that I never would have had if it hadn't been for this circumstance of us being in the right place at the right time, making music together. And so I was like thinking about separate thing, and then this little thing in common. I was like, oh, there's a word for that, or there's a thing for that. It's called a Venn diagram. And I was like, what a great logo would that be? I was like, Alex, we're like a Venn diagram, and so we can be Venn duo. And she was like, I think I like it. And so that's kind of how
at first I was like, that is so corny. I was like, that is so corny. We can't be a Venn diagram. And Hannah was like, but that could be our logo. And I'm like, I never thought about the logo part. And I was like, okay, I guess. But my natural instinct and first response was, I think that's corny, but I kind of like it.
I mean, it kind of is a little bit corny, but I mean, we are musicians, not graphic designers. And so the easy logo was definitely a selling point for us. But at the end of the day, I do think it represents us in our stories pretty well. And it looks nice on our Instagram page. And whenever we have our podcast, we can make a little Venn diagram logo and say, this has been the Venn Pod. And so it's all worked out. That's kind of how we got our name and our background and stuff.
And so how do you decide the repertoire that you're going to do? I mean, you had mentioned looking up some free samples of clarinet duets, but I guess more so, why continuing that idea of the clarinet duet? And like, do you do like any arrangements of your own, or like how does that process work?
So originally, like I mentioned, we were doing a lot of Bach because we would use a click track. Everybody who does multi tracks or virtual collaborations uses a click track because you have to. So we were doing Bach because in those Bach duets, it's one tempo the entire time, right? As we progressed and started using up all the free things, we were like, uh-oh, what do we do? And we Hannah and I have similar taste in repertoire already, so it wasn't hard. So whenever I would come across a piece, and we do this to this day, I just send it to Hannah on any means, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Messenger, whether it's IG, anywhere, I just send it to her right away. I'm like, I kind of like this. When it comes to pieces that aren't originally written for clarinet, duets or duos, we actually have our great friend Christopher Williams, who's writing a piece for us for low ICA. He is a great arranger and does a lot of the arrangements for us. I believe he even like arranged the piece which we submitted for low ICA. So we have that lucky friend with us. So a lot of the times it is difficult finding repertoire because with us being virtual, we have to take into account time changes and tempo changes and all of those things because it's very hard. But Hannah is the mastermind behind the click tracks. So she like does all the math now. And if it's a time change or a tempo change, she like, I wish I could read the message she sent me recently because I had to read it like 5 times to understand how this tempo change was actually going to work. But she does it. So she takes the lead on that. And in terms of like responsibility on who's picking the repertoire, we don't really have a you pick a piece this time, I pick a piece this time. It's kind of like we both look and we rate or rank the pieces in which both of us find.
I will say that Alex, I'm really thankful for her because she is really good at like sniffing out these pieces of repertoire. So like as far as like, you know, the body of literature for clarinet duos, like you obviously have like your classical stuff like your Bachs. You also have like the classical stuff that you find in like your Orange Voxman duet book. And so, but that stuff, like that stuff has its place. And like that's definitely how Venduo started. But as we have grown as musicians, I think Alex and I have kind of like wanted to reach into, you know, kind of the newer genre. We're kind of like let's explore some new sound, let's explore some new things. And so we have run into really great duets like Tachycardia by Mark Mellis that we just did in Reno. That's a fantastic piece of literature for a clarinet duo. But I mean, we have not found like a ton of music for clarinet duo. It's really hard to find. And so it definitely takes some time and some like sifting through to find those gems. But that's kind of where Venduo comes into play even more, because part of our mission is expanding that body of literature for clarinet duo. So, I mean, obviously we are still a new project. We don't really generate revenue. We are not getting rich off of Venduo, believe it or not. We have not made very much money, if any at all, doing this. We just do it because we love it. But we hope someday to be able to use our platform as Venduo to commission and to curate new pieces for clarinet duo, because as two people in a duo, we found a lot of value from our project and from collaborating with another person. And so it's our goal to help other pieces for clarinet duo help those things happen. And so like Alex was saying, our good friend Christopher Williams, or rather Alex's good friend who she has so kindly shared with me, Christopher Williams, he is writing us a new piece for bass clarinet and for B flat clarinet for low ICA, which we're really excited about. And so that is kind of like our first, I would say, commissioning project. Alex, would you say it's like the first piece that we've been able to like, you know, ask for, and that has been written for us as Venduo. Christopher also has lots of really cool pieces for like clarinet quartet. One of there, it's what is it called? Conquest. There's Final Quest, and then there's also one called Space Landing. Is that the title of it? Yeah, that he has so kindly shared with us, and that we've been able to put together virtually as Venduo. So we're excited to share his music and hope to continue to share his music for clarinet duo and quartet, and also get the names of other artists out there as well.
And so, how does the recording process work for all this? Do you like individually make your own recordings and then put them all together, or like how does all that work?
Do you want me to explain?
Yeah, go for it, girl.
I got you. Okay. So first you need the click track, because that's the basis of it all. If it's a piece with bass clarinet, typically we always want bass clarinet to be recorded first, because that's our tonal center. It's the lowest instrument. So in terms of intonation in virtual projects, that's a hard thing. And one of the things I just overcame today. So audio is definitely first. From there, you could record your video at the same time. We tend to record our videos after, just because we need to make sure our audio is like in place. And obviously when we're recording our video, we have to play the piece again straight through. So it's just little things like that. I will say one thing that I admire about our projects a lot is that because we're not tech savvy like the pros, we don't like change pitches, we don't like shift notes, we don't do any of that like actual fine tuning. So what you hear is us. Like if there's a note that's not in tune, that was us. If it was in tune, that was us. So I'm really proud of that, about that aspect of our work, and I think that's something that we will keep because that's true to us. So yeah, that's the summary of the process.
And there's a lot of back and forth that happens with the process. Like we are in constant communication throughout that, like sending audio, like, oh, I redid my audio because I didn't like my note at this part. So what do you think about it now? And we do that a lot. And so we've gotten really good at, I would say that my ears have grown a lot just as being a part of Venduo, like listening critically, like error, like troubleshooting and stuff. Like I have just grown so much, you know, in that way, being a part of Venduo, having to constantly take a step back and like listen to my own work and listen to Alex's work and how do they fit together, and like, oh, is that weird intonation thing me, or is it her, or how can we fix it, you know? So yeah, there's a lot of back and forth. You should look at our text threads. So much back and forth that happens before a video reaches Instagram or YouTube or wherever we put it.
And so, as you had mentioned, one of the performances that you did was for the International Clarinet Association. For those in Pittsburgh that do not know, they have a clarinet fest that happens every single summer. And last year they had it in Reno, Nevada. And from what I understand, that was the first time you got to perform together as a duo in person. So, what was that experience like for the both of you?
It was really exciting. I was so excited to finally get to play with Alex. It's like it's kind of been our running joke because like we've been supposed to play together for so long. Like by the time we finally did it at Clarinet Fest, we were have supposed to been playing together for like 3-4 years. And I'm like, man, it took us this long. It took us this long in front of an international audience to get to play together. But as excited as I would say I was also pretty nervous because obviously we had never done it before. But I think that Alex and I are both really flexible people. And, having played with each other for so long, like we're used to just meeting in the middle and matching each other's sounds. I mean, that's something that we have to do on our virtual collaborations anyways. Whoever records first, like I am constantly adjusting. Oh, Alex is a little bit warmer here, or she's tending to a little bit of a brighter sound here. We're constantly adjusting to meet each other. And I think that that skill set that we have built separately also really helped us when we were finally together in person. And I also just think it was a matter of like accountability. Like we both like had our stuff down when we arrived in Nevada. Like I can remember I got there like 2 days before our performance, and Alex and I got up at 7 a.m. the next day and we're rehearsing at 7 a.m. Like, let's go, like pedal to the metal. Like we've got to get this down for our performance tomorrow. And so we both like had our parts and we just laid it down, and there was some things that we had to talk about and come to an agreement about, but like we were able to just sit down and meet each other in the middle and do it.
And I would say the biggest thing, like in terms of accountability, so we perform Mark Mellett's Tachycardia, very met heavy piece, metronome heavy piece, and very exhausting.
Yeah.
The version we recorded is much slower than what we actually performed it live, because we realized in order to play that full piece live, we need to like we need to put a kick in our step. So we actually increased the tempo and we did a lot of metronome practice. Like when Hannah and I would be talking, we'd be like, okay, I just turned off the metronome, I'm surviving. Or, okay, I only messed up one note, I'm surviving. Or, oh, I did not make it through that one, I'm not surviving. So it was a lot of like that type of practice, because in reality, when you're playing a Mark Mellett's piece, if you ever played one, it has to be in time, because if you're not in time, you could tell, because the parts are interlocking with each other. So if one person is too fast, the perfect fitting and balance of where the notes are supposed to be, it's not going to happen. So that's why we practice a lot with the metronome. Like Hannah and I mentioned, this was our first time playing live, so it was scary, and it was on one of the biggest stages for a clarinetist. In terms of that, we had like 2 days to practice. And like she said, we practiced at 7 a.m. that morning, but we also practiced like 3 times a day until we performed. We just ran the piece. The first time it was just, let's see what happens. The second time was like, let's fix things. And the third time was, let's run it again. And I believe the second day we did the same thing again. And whenever we could fit in another rehearsal, we definitely did. So it was a lot of like dedication and like preparing and organizing on our end, because although we wanted to have fun and explore and do other things and meet with people, we knew that we had to practice. So that's how we successfully did ICA 2022.
And what was it like for you to be, I guess now still being recognized by a group like the International Clarinet Association and continuing to be invited to do these performances and to do these festivals for them?
I mean, we get giddy every single time. I mean, we get so excited. Our video that we did, we just performed Paco de Alba's Reverberations for two B flat clarinets, and that was featured at the ICA New Music Weekend virtual conference. But I mean, we're just so humbled and honored by every opportunity that we get to, put our content out there. Number one, because obviously we're passionate about it. We've put a lot of time and effort and love and care into these projects, and so it's just really exciting for us when we get to share that with a larger audience. But it also really excites us because our heroes are like members of the ICA. Like the people who email us were like, oh my gosh, like Steph Gardner liked our video, really? Like that's so exciting. Like people we really look up to and want to be like are saying, like, good job. Like, we want to share your stuff. And so that's really encouraging to us from a professional standpoint.
Yeah, and I just like Hannah said, I'm just humbled by it every time because who would have thought like we did something for fun and now it's become something real and we're actually submitting to be like featured in these festivals and it's just like, whoa, who would have
Yeah.
thought? So it's giddy every time, like Hannah said.
So besides the clarinet duets, I actually took a listen to some of the podcasts, and for those who are wondering, in Pittsburgh, there is a wide range of what they talk about on these podcasts. So just wondering, what is like the inspiration behind those? How do you pick the topics, and like how do you choose the content that you're going to produce in those?
I would say it's mostly based off of our experiences and things we wish we knew. Uh, from my point of view, I feel like there's a lot that isn't talked about. Like I think one of our first podcasts was about graduate school auditions. For me, I'm the first one in my family to ever get a master's degree in music. And rarely do you hear people talking about what an audition process is truly like when you're trying to get your master's or trying to get your DMA. So we really wanted to provide insight into our experiences so that it could potentially help someone else and prepare someone else for when they're getting ready for their auditions. And in terms of like real life situations, it's like our approaches to being a music major, what we think is good, what we think could be worked on in the culture of a music school and stuff like that. So
Yeah, I like to think of the Ven Pod as like your two older clarinet sisters, like just having a conversation. Like, I definitely view Alex as like, I mean, Alex is my friend, obviously, but like, when I was first starting out at Messiah, I definitely viewed her as a mentor. She was so kind and like guiding me along and like, showing me so many things, like not only about the clarinet, like how to be a better musician, but also just how to be like a better professional, like how to like, how to network well, this is how we act in rehearsals. This is how we come prepared to rehearsals. Just things like that like are not explicitly taught, but are such an important thing, but are such important things to know to like be a successful professional in the field of music. Yeah, I mean, we often have had those conversations like, what does it look like to be a courteous professional? Or what is healthy about this music program? What's not so healthy about this music program? Or how can we have a more dynamic rehearsal? So like, I don't know, we have those conversations and I feel like they're conversations that like, could benefit a lot of people from being a fly on the wall for those things. So we just decided that, what, why don't we record it? And if somebody, is wondering, how can I be a better ensemble member? Or if somebody is being shady and is like, you need to be a better ensemble member, and then they just send them the link to our podcast and then they'll know. No, I'm kidding. Don't be shady. That's not how you do it. But
Hannah says that, but she made a whole TikTok on how I don't have pencils in rehearsals.
that's how Alex and I became friends, is because I let her use my pencils in rehearsal.
She didn't let me. I would take them off of her music stand.
100%. She would. She stole them.
So you mentioned that you're on like a various amount of social media platforms. Why going that route instead of just sticking to one?
That's a good question, Matt. Well, the kids are using TikTok and we want to get our name out there. We want people to know Ven Duo. Plus, I think it's a fun way, it's a fun thing for us. Like, we like to brainstorm ideas for TikToks together. And it's a good way for me to, blow off some creative steam, as it were. People around UNT are like, oh my gosh, I saw your TikTok, it's so funny. And I'm like, I do the stupidest things for the internet, like you would not believe, like watching me make this TikTok running in my living room with my clarinet. Like, who am I? But I think it's to reach a wider audience, honestly. And whether they find us because of our podcast on YouTube, whether they find us because of a piece of Chris's that we did and posted, or whether they find us because they're like, why is this girl eating tortilla chips and then playing her clarinet? Like, they'll still find Ven Duo, and that's the ultimate goal, I guess.
And each platform, I think, has a different purpose. Like, honestly, Hannah's TikToks do great for getting Ven Duo out there. I am a little not TikTok savvy, so that's why that's Hannah's job. But
we're gonna work.
But in terms of YouTube, that's definitely our platform to post our full work. So initially when we started, we would just do snippets, like measure 23 to 43. Like, we would never do full pieces. But as we progressed, pretty quickly, we were like, if we're doing all these short projects, why don't we just do the whole thing? So whenever we complete a full work, that's what YouTube is for, because on Instagram, we just use it almost as the promo content for YouTube. And then in terms of Instagram, it's interesting because although like our combined account as Venn Duo is not like our largest following, our individual followings I think does the job for that, because there's instances where like one of my friends the other day, they were like, I keep seeing your dual partner on my Instagram page, and it's not from like Van Duo and it's not from my account, but they recognize that that's a Van Duo member. So it's like, I don't know, the association of this is a Van Duo person, Van Duo, go to that page, there's us. So it's like a pathways to finding us, you know?
And as you mentioned, you are finding that the more you do this, the better your overall clarinet skills are growing. So do you see, so I guess my first question is, what other music groups besides Van Duo are you a part of now? And have you seen these skills that you've learned from doing this little clarinet duo project into your larger ensemble participation?
Yeah, absolutely. So at UNT, I am in the UNT Wind Symphony, and I'm also in the UNT Symphony Orchestra. I'm not currently enrolled in chamber music. I hope to be next semester. I'm really looking forward to that because we just talked about this on our last podcast, how to be a good ensemble member. But honestly, chamber music is something I really enjoy, and so I would say as far as large ensemble playing goes, I mean, obviously in orchestra, it's a different kind of playing than in band. So in orchestra, you're required to be more of a soloist or more of a duo partner with the other person who's playing clarinet with you. And I would say, like I mentioned earlier, just I would say my ears have developed a lot. Like I'm much more picky, and I'm able to more quickly troubleshoot, like, oh, I'm sharp, I need to come down, or oh, they're flat, but I'll adjust to them because I know the issue. Things like that. And just listening overall, like doing these virtual projects, having to listen so carefully to all the parts, and then also having to like sift through the sound as a whole to be able to find what's not working has really improved my skills as a musician. So that translates a lot into orchestra, but also into band as well, because I mean, there are times when the ensemble is large and you're playing with someone across the ensemble. Being a member of a virtual ensemble such as Venn Duo, where we're always playing with a click track, we're always playing with a metronome, it certainly made me a more honest woman in terms of rhythm and tempo accuracy. I can definitely say that those skills, in addition to my listening, have improved as well.
Yeah, and similar points. So I'm at ASU. I'm in the wind ensemble this cycle. I'm in two Pierrot ensembles. So that's a makeup of violin, cello, clarinet, flute, percussion, and piano. And then I'm also a part of like smaller chamber projects whenever I'm asked to do that. And I collaborate with composers pretty often. So in terms of how Van Duo helps that, it's the listening and the communication. And I think for listening, it's so for example, if you're in a large ensemble, you usually have a stand partner. And if you're not the principal chair, then it's being able to fit into the sound of that principal chair. Or if you are at the principal chair, it's politely trying to suggest that you have to like as a section fit into the principal sound. And one thing that I always tell my section at ASU is that the way we sit, the principal is on the left and everyone else is on the right. So I say always listen through your right ear to the left. It's listening and fitting into the sound of the person next to you. And likewise, when we are collaborating, it's a lot of listening. Like in the recent project that I just sent my audio to Hannah for this morning, I like sent a whole rant I was like, I don't like how I sound here. I'm flat here. I need to raise my pitch at the end here to fit into you, but then I need to cover some stuff because I'm sharp up there. So give me a second. I'll be back with that next tomorrow or something. And it's little things like that. It's the fine tuning. So my ears definitely trained, because a lot of the times I wear like those clunky headphones and it's just me listening to myself for like hours, honestly speaking. And it's just being like, okay, I don't like my tone here. Oh, I could fit into Hannah's sound better. Oh, I'm too bright here. I need to warm up my sound. And it's little things like that. Second point is communication. Hannah and I communicate a lot. If we think the person is out of tune, we're just like, hey, I think your pitch is a little too high here. I can't correct mine. In terms of how that fits into a real life scenario, if I'm in one of my Pierrot ensemble rehearsals, it's politely saying like, hey, I think you may be like out of time here, or hey, like our tuning is a little off, can we play together to see what's going on? And it's just communicating that in like an efficient and effective way. And then in terms of communication, you also have to be accountable of yourself, and it's listening to yourself. And if you think, oh, maybe I'm out of tune, is communicating that and being like, hey, I think I'm out of tune, or hey, I think I'm lost. Can we do that one more time? And it's just being honest, you know? So I think all of the things that Hannah and I do with Band Duo definitely translates into real life scenarios. I think in some instances, there's a little bit more pressure to doing it virtually, because it's like you have all this time to record something and it's still out of tune or it's still out of time. So sometimes it is a little bit more pressure, but reality is if it's an in-person performance, it's live. But if you do it virtually, it's recorded. So there's some like leniency for live performances versus virtual. So
Is there any big upcoming projects that we as listeners should be aware of maybe in the next couple of months?
Well, we do have some holiday content coming out. We worked with Alex. What is Sarah's last name?
Lucas Page.
We are working with an ASU composer and clarinetist, Sarah Lucas Page. She is so awesome. She has arranged some little Christmas duos and quartets for us. So we're really excited to drop those very soon. And we will also be at Low ICA January 4th through 8th. So if you're not already registered, make sure you are and buy your plane ticket pronto, because we want to see you there. Yeah, and also at Low ICA, you're going to see our friends Chaos Incarnate, the trio that we just did Devil Sticks with. So yes, there are lots of very fun projects coming up soon.
And then during that time, we're going to record a separate project to have that as well. So that's a secret project.
I think we are certainly looking forward to that. So I guess to bring in a couple of questions to wrap things up here, where do you see both of your futures like when you are still maybe like still doing this, and then you graduate with your master's degrees?
Alex, you're a little closer to being a real adult than I am, so you can go.
You have one more year. I got 2 more years, but
I think that's true.
The pro of being a virtual ensemble, like we call ourselves a hybrid ensemble now because we've officially performed live. Like at first we were just virtual because we never performed live, but the pro of being virtual and knowing how to collaborate virtually is that we can continue for life, like honestly speaking. And Hannah and I have such like a great connection as musicians and friends that I honestly see this being a long-term thing where eventually like maybe we'll go places and like just perform, have recitals. But at this current time, like festivals are like gateway to performances, only because we are students. Like we do have other obligations that we have to pay attention and give time to. But I definitely see us like performing live, like maybe having a recital at our alma mater, Messiah University, or like maybe vice versa, eventually coming to ASU or maybe doing UNT, stuff like that. So being at 2 different schools, there's so many pros because we have 2 different groups of connections, like how we're working with the ASU composer now, who's arranged a lot of Christmas tunes for us. Maybe we'll have a UNT composer to collaborate with. So it's little things like that I think will give us longevity as a duo. So yeah.
Well, I'm sure that that us being audience members of Pittsburgh would be more than happy to have you here if that was ever a possibility.
Oh my goodness, just tell us the date, Matthew. We'll be there.
Okay. And then so what would you say to, I guess, younger musicians who might be looking at like, doing something similar to along the lines that both of you are doing right now, but may not necessarily know like, what's the best way to start? Is this a good idea? What would you say to those people?
Just try it. That's what we did. We literally had no idea what we were doing. Literally none. We just wanted to put out a performance that we had prepared and we hadn't gotten the chance to. So if I would say if there is anybody who is like wanting to get into the virtual performing scenario, or even just wants to perform chamber music with a friend, like just do it. Like, you never know where it's going to take you. And performing chamber music is such a beneficial thing for you as a musician. It introduces you to new music. It gives you new experiences. Chamber music is a great way to make new connections and to trick people into being your friend, as Alex and I have found out. So like, yeah, absolutely. Just do it. And don't be afraid of failing. Just because like you record something doesn't mean you have to like share it with the world if you're not ready to. I mean, Alex and I put it on Instagram because we were ready to share it. But if that makes you nervous, don't feel the pressure to. Like, it can be whatever you want it to be. If you want it to just be a thing that you film with your friend and you show your grandmas on Christmas, do that. If you're ready to throw it on YouTube and make it part of your professional portfolio, do that. But absolutely, just try it. Like, find a piece and that you're passionate about, and find somebody else who is also passionate about that, and you're going to have a great experience regardless.
I agree. And then like in terms of like the fear of doing it, like Hannah said, just go for it, because as musicians, we're always questioning like, what are people going to think? Like, what if they think it's bad? Well, you won't know if someone thinks it's bad until you post it, and maybe someone might comment it's bad, but the chances of that are pretty low because most of the people that follow you are your friends. So they're probably going to say it's good regardless. So I think it's really good to like just go out there and explore, because I think technology is a big part of being a musician nowadays. Like if you are in college and you are trying to pursue a career in music, like being on social media, having a digital portfolio is a big part of what gets people hired and gets people recognized nowadays. So putting something out there is just one step closer to getting to your end goal in my mind.
And if that daunts you, like if the whole technology thing like scares you, number one, I'm a big believer that you should run towards the thing that scares you. Okay, not away from it. But if that's like daunting to you or you don't know where to start, ask questions. Like literally DM Alex or myself. DM somebody who you see also does virtual collaborations, because the music community is very small if you haven't figured that out already. And people are generally kind and willing to help other people out. So like just ask questions and you'll figure it out.
There's been so many people that have asked me personally, like, how do you do this? Or like, what do you do? And it's because like, yes, like, and that's why we have Ben Pod, because I think eventually we'll do podcasts to talk about this. But in terms of virtual collaborations, there was nothing on this prior to like COVID. Like there was a few influencers that made videos on here's how I create a multi-track, but there's little to none. And sometimes it almost feels like it's a secret, like maybe they don't want to tell me that they record their audio before their video, because then it makes it look they look like a fraud or something. But like when people ask me like, how do you do that, I'm like, I record my audio first and then I do my video. It's like it's not a secret for me, because that is the reality of the situation. And I feel like in a weird way people like have this unspoken but spoken society. And it's unless you know the right people, you don't get the answers. But that's why VenPod is VenPod. It's we want to put the information out there so that it is accessible to everybody. So maybe we'll make more pods on like the technology side of our duo, because I don't think we've really done that. We've mostly done like life experiences, but I feel like the tech would be a good side to it too.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We should also throw our text threads up there so they can see what great communication looks like, because that's funny too.
Hey, I'm doing all this technology and this podcasting, and even I know I don't know anything. So maybe I could learn something from you as well. So then I guess my last question is, we as WQED being a public radio station here in Pittsburgh, we really rely on our community. So why do you think it's important that, people should support a radio station like us?
I think that's important because it keeps classical music alive. It keeps it in our ears and in our lives. I mean, so much, classical music, without classical music, we would not have any of the music, pop, rock, hip hop, whatever it is that consider your genre of choice. We would not have that if it weren't for classical music. Classical music was the popular music of the day way back when. So I think it's amazing that radio stations like WQED still exist, and that it's keeping classical music alive and in our lives and in our ears, because it's beautiful and should continue to be celebrated.
And then in terms of why it's important, stealing the word from Hannah, it's keeping classical music alive. It's also giving a platform to us youth who are also trying to keep classical music alive. So it's a reminder that, you may think that everybody's like aging in the classical music world, but no, there's a whole new generation coming, and there's even more to come with all of these prodigies like showing us up. But it's just being like, there's more people studying classical music, so don't forget that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I will say this: it was an absolute pleasure having both of you on here. Hopefully, you can come to Pittsburgh one day and play for us because I am sure we would just be more than happy to have you.
Oh my goodness, dream come true.
I'll stay by Hannah's place, and I'll be there.
Yeah, you can stay at my house, Alex.
All right. Well, you have been listening to the Voice of the Arts podcast page here on WQED FM 89.3, the voice of the arts in Western Pennsylvania.